Hello.
Hello.
You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I sure can very clearly. Um, Welcome to the Sean Ferrell podcast. I am Sean Ferrell with Grace Peterson. Grace, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing okay.
All right. Did you have a good week? Did you have a good weekend?
Yes, I had to think about it for a second. I forgot. Yes, it did have a good weekend. It was very nice.
Well, um, this weekend was the first weekend without football, so I'm gonna have to learn how to use so I'm gonna have to get used to Netflix for about the next till August at least. So
Well, they have a few football shows on there, so maybe that can help you.
well they do have the XFL, so it's kind of like a fill in for a few months, but
Oh,
but
gotcha.
yeah, I don't let me see. Okay, so want to talk about a few things. I want to get a counselor's perspective on this. Um, Back in 2010, there was a relationship that I had that did not, clearly did not work out. I knew it wasn't going to work out. And it's like the more I dig and the more I think about it, um, I had one counselor ask me this. She said, well, do you think your depression was dictating your decision making with her? I said yes. Then I thought about it even more. And I think it was more 80-20. 80% that I knew that the relationship wasn't going to work, and 20% the oppression. So she told me back in 2010, she she he told me that my depression was dictating my decision making. Do you think that is a form of using one's depression against you or not from a counselor's perspective?
Hmm. It seems like a complicated question because I think the biggest part of that answer would be like looking at the relationship as a whole, not just that piece. Um, because I could see where that could be, kind of a manipulative tool in a way. But I can also see how it would be valid,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the situations that someone's experiencing. So I don't think it's a simple answer to that question. I think it really depends on the person and like how that depression is impacting them, and also on the partner and like how do they view depression or how do they view the symptoms of depression. Do they see those things as valid? I think that there's kind of a few different ways that that could be looked at depending on the situation as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. One of the counselors told me it just sounded like unrealistic expectations, which can be that at too. It
It
can be
can be, yeah.
unrealistic expectations, but I just wanted to get a counselor's perspective because, like I said, that has like you just said, the situation is the situation is complicated. So, but yeah, so there was a guy, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. He was 17 years old, and he was standing on the Hernando de Soto Bridge, and he was going to end his own life. When I
Mhm.
saw that, um, when I saw that, I thought, I want to get Grace's perspective on that. So, what do you think about the 17-year-old? Um, he was a new father.
Mhm.
MPED came, talked with him, talked him off that ledge, And
Mhm.
so what do you thinking about that?
I have a few different perspectives about that actually, because that kind of brought up something for me that felt really close. And so I'll tell a little bit of a story if that's okay.
Sure.
I when I was in grad school, we take a crisis intervention class, and one of the classes that I did, we got lucky and got to have a member of the crisis intervention team who's part of the police department come into our class, and she actually presented us with crisis scenarios that she had been through. And the scenario that I had to try and help someone with was that they were on a bridge about to end their life. And so I remember like acting out this scenario with this police officer, and she treated it very real. And I remember there were some things I did right, there were some things that I didn't do right in that scenario, and that was something that always kind of stuck with me. And then a few years ago, I guess at this time, maybe a couple years ago at this time, I had a client who sticks with me to this day. I think about this client a lot. And one of his big issues that I was helping him with was kind of like chronic suicidal thoughts. And something he had always shared with me was that, if he ever did plan to follow through, that his plan was going to be going to jump off the bridge across the Mississippi River. And I very much had a lot of sleepless nights over this particular client because I was very fearful of him actually going to do that. And my supervisor at the time, asked me, well, if he did, what would you do? If you got a call and he told you he was going down there, what would you do? And I was like, I would go. And he said, would that be a safe thing for you to do? And I said, well, at that point, I would obviously have called the police and alerted them, but yes, I would go. Like that person would need someone safe to talk to. And, I had a close therapeutic relationship with this client. So I thought I could help that person, if he put himself in that position. And I always remember thinking it was so strange, the few times that I really had sleepless nights over this client, thinking that that was something that he could potentially do, and remembering the exercise I did in grad school. I was like, that is just very strange of a coincidence to me. And so I was really fearful a lot of the time that he would do that. Luckily, that never happened. And to this day, I believe he's safe as far as I'm aware. So that was a really great thing. And so then when I saw that in the news, I was like, whoa. I was like, I've definitely thought about what it would be like to help someone in that position. And I mean, I don't know what was said between that police officer and that young man. But I think it's miraculous that someone was there that was able to connect with him and understand him, because I think that situation could have turned out a lot differently if that particular police officer was not aware of how to talk to someone in that type of situation, which clearly she was. And so I think that's the part that stood out to me most, I guess, not necessarily kind of the specifics to who that person was or who that police officer was, but just kind of the connection that they were able to share in that moment, because that's what got him down, was that she was able to find a connection to him. At least that's my perspective of how I see that situation.
Yeah. You mentioned chronic suicidal thoughts with a client.
Mhm.
Um, I had never been on medicine for depression before. So when I first saw my neurologist, she asked me that. She said, "Have you ever been on meds for depression?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well, would you consider that?" I had never been on meds before. I kind of thought that was weird, so to speak, but I said, "Yeah, sure." So I told my counselor about it. And they said if they put you on what they call sertraline, are you familiar with that? Yeah.
Mhm.
sertraline. Um, it carries a very low risk of flooding your mind of suicidal thoughts, like a 10% risk. And I remember my counselor telling me, if they put you on sertraline, which is SSRIs, I want you to text me because those carry a risk of overwhelming thoughts of suicide. So I was aware of that. And the first couple of times I took it, um, I didn't have those thoughts. Um, I didn't have those thoughts. And but I did mention that I was off my meds for a while. The last time he spoke, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was off my meds for a while due to the scammer situation, whatnot, and went through a very low period, but got back on my meds. So it's more really for like mood. So, but like I said, it does carry a very low risk of overwhelming thoughts of suicide. Mm-hmm. But I haven't had those so far. So I was looking at I saw a post on Instagram and it talked about the suicide rate for 2021, while the suicide rate actually went down in 2020. Did you know that it actually went up in 2021? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it went up in 2021. And the national average is like 45,000 a year, at least in the US. So for males in 2021, 38,025 in 2021, but for females, 9,621, which adds up to 47,646. Mm-hmm. That's like 2,600 more than the national average. What is your reaction to that?
And just so I'm hearing all of that right, the reaction to it going up in 2021. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think given the state of what many people were going through in 2020 because of the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, and how in turn that impacted so many people in the following year, whether that was their home life, whether that was their relationships, their financial situations, their work situations, whatever it could have been. I think, not only thinking of the pandemic timeframe kind of leading up to 2021, but I also think the political climate, leading up to 2021, I think that needs to be talked about as well, because I think so many aspects of things in our climate in many ways of the word are not necessarily shifting from something that wasn't before, but especially because of a lot more access we all have to hearing what other people say, hearing, what legislations are being putting out there, hearing all the different ways that things are being impacted. I think, of course, that is going to up a lot of people's mental health concerns that they deal with. On top of that, for some people that might, already have struggled with suicidal thoughts, it might have been like, the straw that broke the camel's back. That's such a generalization for me to say, but just kind of based on the numbers and the state of the world, I don't think it's too far out of reach to say that those things probably had a correlation with each other.
Yeah. I know for the first couple of weeks, in March 2020, I couldn't stand being locked in the house. I can understand being locked in the house. I know it had an impact on relationships, and I know it impacted people who needed that everyday support system. Mm-hmm. talking about seeing your senior counselor every day, every week on Wednesday, and now you can't see your counselor because everybody's home, everybody's on lockdown. So I think it had a big impact, particularly on children, particularly on school children. A lot of people, a lot of the children lost years, uh, lost at least, I want to say 2 years because of the pandemic and worsening mental health. My mental health got a little bit bad. I was in the depression for a few weeks, but eventually came out of it. But it was hard. But no, it was hard for a lot of folks. Let me ask you about did you know who Kyle Jacobs is?
I don't think so.
Singer, he was a singer songwriter. He was married to Kelly Pickler.
Doesn't ring bells for me.
well, 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 Kyle Jacobs was I believe he was a country singer. He was also a songwriter. He was married to Kelly Pickler. She was on American Idol. Back in 2005, they ended up getting married. And I just found this out while I was prepping for a video on Sunday that Kyle Jacobs actually ended his life by suicide. He had just produced his fifth studio album. So and I made a video saying that the different faces of suicide is the everyday common man, it's the school teacher, it's the construction worker, it's the truck driver, it's myself, it's the fast food worker, it's yeah. So yeah, so I had a friend who I worked with. I believe I told you about this. I may have not, but she told me, Sean, if you ever have those thoughts, I want you to come to me. And I said, okay. And then furthermore, replied like, I'm being like dead serious. Come to me. I'm like, okay. 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 I got you. I got you. So support systems are important. Did you hear about a 14-year-old? There was a 14-year-old girl in New Jersey who ended her life by suicide. I guess you didn't hear about how that. Okay, well, first of all, the incident was actually posted on social media, believe it or not, and they threw a drink at her. They kicked and dragged her down the halls. They threw her in the lockers, and they actually punched her. Had bruises all over her face, and the girl who was recording it, she was laughing, saying, "That's what you get." The parents were rightfully so outraged, and the school superintendent actually had to resign over that. And there were 4 people who were on her. Those 14s have been charged. They actually got charged with crimes. Rightfully so. That bring up some painful memories of bullying for me when I had my shorts pulled down. After I actually had my shorts pulled down in the seventh grade in front of everybody. Um, I was making fun of because I had no teeth in the front for a while. Um, I was called every name in the book, so that kind of brought back painful memories. Not as painful to today as they were back in 1999 or 2003 to 2004. But what do you think about the impact of bullying? Because it just seems to have a recurring negative effect that does not have a good ending.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I myself was bullied in certain ways at a certain point in puberty and things like that growing up.
Tell me
Um,
about all that.
it wasn't anything that, I mean, I obviously, removed now 30 years old, I can
Oh,
look at it from a different perspective. But
yeah.
as a, 13 to 15 growing girl, I was bullied by never girls, actually. I was never bullied by other girls. I was bullied by boys.
Mm.
And so that was a pretty difficult thing to go through. I had a great support system. I had great friends, and it was just something I tried not to give like too much of my energy.
Mhm.
I have actually had a couple of those particular people reach out to me as adults that we are now and like apologize for what
Mhm.
they did. So that was pretty interesting. But luckily it was just something that I had the ability to have, a strong support system, and I just tried not to put a lot of stock into what other people said or did. I don't really know how I did that at such a young age, but I was able to. And so it didn't impact me too much, other than just being upset about it for a while at that age. But then I kind of just realized that those people were unkind and I didn't really need to listen to what they were saying or doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that was kind of I don't want to get like too into it because it's details and things like that. But, growing girl, that age, puberty, things are kind of happening with your body and things like that are changing. And that was something that people wanted to pick on me for some reason or call me names. And so it was difficult, but I mean, yeah, I think the fact that it was boys and not girls,
Mhm.
um, was different from what a lot of people experience. Like most people are kind of bullied by people that maybe they're closer to in that way. But I don't know. It sounds kind of weird when I say it out loud, but it was a little bit easier in that sense of like my friends didn't really care what anyone was saying. I had a great friend group. I had great people in my life. So those people were kind of easy. It was easy for me to push it off
Mhm.
and just know that it didn't really matter in
Mhm.
the long run.
Yeah. Um, imagine that I had your imagine that I had your perspective when I was in high school from '01 to '04. Imagine if I had your perspective. Because all the because um when you're getting laughed at, when you're getting picked on, when you're getting called names, some people can brush it off, some people can laugh it off. Um, I was the one that could not laugh it off. I would say what I did was I ignored it, but inside of me, anger was building. It was building and it was building and it
Mhm.
built and built and built and built to the point where when I graduated high school, um, I want to say I was um, happy, elated that I was graduating, bitter over what I had gone on through from middle school all the way through high school. And it led to mood swings, anger issues, depression, and eventually a suicide attempt. So, so, so yeah. If I had the perspective today that I had, if I could have the perspective that I have today, back in 2003 to 2004, I would probably wouldn't let anger build up. But again, we didn't know what we know in 2003 as opposed to what we know in 2023. So,
right. Right. I mean, I will say, because that, you know, saying it out loud makes you kind of rethink other pieces too. I mean, the one thing that did come of it was that I did kind of develop a disordered relationship with food and exercise,
yeah,
because a lot of the bullying was around my body and the way I was
yeah,
developing, things like that. And so that was something that kind of spiked for a certain time period in high school, and then kind of, you know, something I still have to be really mindful of for myself. But I think that was the biggest piece, I guess, of how it impacted me, of the way I just saw my body and the way it was talked about, and, you know, things like that. And so it impacted me in that internal way, which sometimes I forget that that's where it came from, like until I'm saying it out loud. But I really do think, I mean, the thing that made me so resilient, I guess, during that time when it was all happening was my friends, you
mm-hmm.
know, because they just weren't paying attention to it. And no one that really cared about me or that I really cared about was paying attention to anything else that was being said. Or if they did, it didn't really impact the way that we were interacting with each other. So, at least at that time period. So I think that was a helpful thing.
Yeah. You said friends. Have you seen have you seen the documentary that I did?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm gonna send it to you because you mentioned friends. Um, you have um, well, you have your school friends, then you have your non-school or friends. In my case, I had none. I really, well, I had one friend. I had one friend. That was it. One friend throughout. I had well, blah, 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 blah. Let me start that over. I had two friends in middle or school and through high school. The one friend graduated class of '03, and my other friend, we graduated together, class of 2004. But outside out of that, I really had no friends, no one to really come to. Um, I did hear tell teachers, but I don't think they really did nothing. So so oh yeah. So oh yeah, but again, if I have the perspective that I have today as opposed to '03 '04. But again, we didn't know what we know in 2003.
Yeah.
We know in 2023. So
Mhm.
so um there was a study done at the University of Michigan, and they interviewed people who attempted suicide. Okay, and um, her name is Courtney Bag. I hope I did butcher that had a name. Hope I didn't butcher that name, but she interviewed people who recently attempted 24 hours before the attempt,
Oh, wow.
and she reported that of the people that she interviewed, 75. Hold on, let me close this out. We got about 10 minutes. and it's left. So, but so it said 75% of people that she interviewed reported alcohol use, drug use, or a negative personal event, all of which can intensify suicidal ideation. As a counselor, what do you think about that?
I guess which part more specifically?
Um, any part, any part. Um, I guess the the triggers, drug use, alcohol use, negative personal event.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we've talked about it before in the sense of like what kind of brings it up for people and what does trigger it. I mean, bullying even being a case for that of what we were just talking about as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's if we look at it from the bigger picture, it's not even like the triggers being a huge part of what might prompt it a
Mm,
lot of the time. But I also I guess think that like those different situational circumstances.
mhm.
Um, I'm trying to think about how to phrase what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Like there are the situational circumstances, and then there's what someone's already going through,
Mhm.
you know? So I think about that a lot of the time of, you know, it might be very easy for someone to, you know, point at bullying and say like, well, this person was bullied. That's why they ended their life this way, or this person had an addiction. That's why they ended their life this way, or, you know, so on and so forth. But I think to put things in the perspective of like only considering triggers or things like that, I don't think that's what you're asking, but that's just where my mind is going. Kind of takes away from looking at the person as a whole. And I don't know if my mind is just going off in the wrong places, but it makes me think of when I went to a training kind of around like how to help someone who's been, you know, who's grieving by a loss of suicide. And one of the things I talked about was like people not being able to understand why, or like what was the trigger, what was the cause. And they talked about, I hope I'm getting the word right if I'm remembering it correctly, but they talked about doing a like kind of a different type of autopsy. I can't remember the term that they use, but basically like looking at the person's life, their experiences, all these things as a whole to help more understand like why someone decided to die by suicide or why someone took their life. And it's kind of looking at all the perspectives, not just the trigger. I guess necessarily. I feel like I took that in a whole different direction. So I'm not really sure where my mind is at right now, but
That's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
Um, I'm gonna end. I'm gonna end with his. I'm gonna end with his story of my own because I was recently triggered a couple of weeks ago, and so somebody who I'm real good friends with. You may hey know her. Brenda Williams Denbo. She's on the AFSP walk committee for Nashville and Memphis as well.
Okay.
So I was going through my I was just going through my emails one day and I saw a particular email that that really that really just triggered that really just triggered some real bad vibes, okay? And I remember asking my current counselor about this. I said, is being scammed a form of trauma? And she said, yes. And I said, well, because, because believe it or not, my counselor was scammed too. Believe it or not, she was scammed. Okay. And so I I said, how long does it take for, how long did it take for you to get over your trauma of being scammed? And it said it took her several months, I believe. And so she told me all about her experiences. She said she even gave her credit card out to she gave her credit card out to this this guy. And so it brings me back to going through my emails. I was going through my emails, saw an email that just triggered the that that just triggered all the things that scammer did to me, and it just brought back so much anger, um, depression, questions. How can you be so? How can you be so stupid? How can you not see this? How can you not see that? How can you not see that she was running a game on you? How can you not see this? And I thought about that for at least a couple of days, maybe two days at the most. And I remember I was laying in my bed. I was laying in my bed, and these thoughts were just going through my head. They were just running through my head, would not stop. And so, um, and so when they would not stop, the thing that I thought hard about was the S word, suicide. And I actually thought about going to the kitchen and actually getting a knife. Okay. I thought hard about it. It was in my head. Before I did hit that, I actually texted a friend. Well, I didn't text her. It was like I was thinking about a knife. Then all of a sudden, my friend texted me. It's like it's like you were thinking about this. Your friend texted you. It was just at the right time. It was just at the right time. And I remember telling her, I said, you texted me at just the right time because you you kind of, I think you kind of stopped me from doing something. She was like, well, what was that? Well, I was going to the I was thinking about going to the kitchen and getting a knife. And you texted me at just the right time because you actually stopped me from doing it. And I remember telling her the next day, I said, you know, it's gonna be a long process because of how badly I got burned and the thousands of dollars that I lost and the hole that she actually put me in. That's what really burns me the most. And it's going to take time to get it all over. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm still in the process of getting over it. But I told her, I'm going to have those thoughts. If I have an inkling that I'm going to act on them, then I will definitely text you. So I'm going to have these thoughts. It's gonna pop up, but um, but that's just the way it is. So only have a couple of seconds left. Do you have a quick final?
Okay.
Now, do you have a final thought?
Well, I know I've said this to you before, but one, I'm just glad that you are okay, and that someone did reach out to you at that time. And the counselor in me wants to kind of like, even just make sure further that you're safe, but I believe that you are. So that's kind of always my initial response when, I'm talking with someone and even having a recent,
Hmm.
incident like that for yourself or feeling that way. I'm just glad that you have people in your life, and it makes me want to just ask and make sure that you feel safe, and you haven't safe since then. I just can't help it. That's who I am. And so I just want to throw that out there first.
Yeah. You, you know what? It's kind of funny. Know what? It's kind of funny. You think people don't care, but they, in all actuality, really do. They
Mhm.
all actually, they actually really do. Let me just tell you this: I'm not the best at reaching out. I'm not the very best at reaching out, but um, but it's something that I'm working on because like I said, I'm not the greatest person as far as reaching out when I'm feeling down and out. So it's something that I'm constantly working on. It's something that I'm constantly working on. Um, I hope I didn't. I hope I did not worry. I hope I did not worry you in any way.
It's my natural reflex response to be worried about people. So
Well, well, yeah, well, yeah, well, yeah, that's what kind of counselors do. They care deeply. Um, I had one counselor who had to actually, she actually had to cancel her session with me one night because she had a client. She had an emergency situation with one of her clients, so she had to cancel her the rest of her appointments. So you haven't had a situation like that, have you? Or
since working for myself, have not had a situation like that,
oh,
but I have
oh,
definitely had situations like that before. Yes, more than once.
okay,
Uh, yeah, multiple different people, multiple different occasions.
okay,
Mhm.
yeah, well, um, Michael Irvin once said it, and I'm gonna end it right here. Michael Irvin once said at the end of his Hall of Fame speech, he said, "To those who feel like that they didn't feel that they belong or didn't measure up," he said, "You tell them to look up, get up, and don't ever give up." So, so yeah,
Mhm.
so yeah, so yeah, so he just so happens to play for the Dallas Cowboys, my favorite team. So
I don't know who Michael Irvin is, but I had a feeling he was connected to the Cowboys somehow by what I've seen, but I wasn't
yes,
sure, but you confirmed it. So
yes, he is. Michael Irvin had his struggles, but I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna send you a link for my documentary. I thought I sent it to you, but I might have sent it to somebody else. But all right, this has been fun, despite the fact we got cut off for a few minutes. Uh,
yeah,
look forward to talking to you again.
next time.
All right, definitely.
Bye.